Welcome everyone to the Veteran Show. And today we have a very special segment. We have planned this for several months now. So we wanted to bring some information on service dogs. As a lot of our veterans have the need of having a service dog to facilitate some other needs on PTSD or any other type of needs, and service dogs have been instrumental through during war times and also peace times to help veterans um, navigate and deal with personal situations. But we wanted to have the right information and also to help on small segments with driven topics on how this works, and for veterans and non-veterans also on how the service dogs work. So we wanted to invite someone who had experience on this environment with animals, especially service dogs. So we created this segment, and we invited someone from Utah who is a amazing uh, training, the dog training behaviorist who has an amazing reputation from her clients on the way she handles their dog's behavior, and also the impact that the owner environment or the owner, I will say, vibration, I will say, demeanor or personality impacts the way the dog responds. So, and that I found it to be extremely interesting. So, I wanted to invite an expert, and her name is Heather, and she works in the Park City area in Utah. So, we wanted to bring this to you from a location in Utah on how to navigate this process. So I have a few questions for her, but I wanted to introduce her and give her a little background on what her expand knowledge is on how to deal with animals, especially dogs. So welcome, Heather, to the Veterans Show, and thank you for joining us today and this family holiday.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molina. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I know we planned this for a few months, and we wanted to bring this information, and I couldn't find anybody else more capable and more knowledgeable on how this uh, kind of match between the dog and the person is. So first, tell us a little bit about you, and what do you do, and what makes you do what you do? What inspired you to do this?
Yeah, so I actually have been working with dogs now for about 25 years. It's been quite a while. I own two businesses, one as a dog trainer. I'm the lead trainer, but then I also recently purchased a boarding and daycare facility where I'm training staff, I'm training owners, and working explicitly with canine behavior. That's what I deal with mostly. And that's probably my number one question that I get from clients is about service animals, having dogs in a place of service. And there are a lot of questions and a lot of things that people just aren't familiar with. And so I would love to be able to answer those questions and hopefully make this a clearer process for people watching your show.
That sounds great, and I really appreciate it. And we do have some questions that we received ahead of time, so I wanted to run one by you and see what your thoughts are on that. So, what kind of dog training do you conduct? Is a particular type of training that you conduct?
Yeah, so I'm primarily positive reinforcement based. I think that's where you get the most confidence out of the dogs that you're working with. It's the best way to create a relationship between a handler and a dog. But then also, especially in regards to service dogs, we really want to boost their confidence. We want them to be moldable and pliable in a variety of situations. And so that positive reinforcement aspect really comes into play with service dogs in particular.
Oh, that's interesting. And just for knowledge, so we understand this, positive reinforcement versus a negative behavior, what would be a difference?
Yeah. So in positive reinforcement, what I'm going to do is when the dog does a behavior that I'm looking for, I'm going to mark it with something like you might have heard of a clicker training. Personally, I say yes. And then the dog gets something that it values in that moment. And that could be anything from pets and praise to my own personal dog. He gets a tennis ball thrown for him. A lot of clients' dogs, they get treats, something that says they're doing the right thing. And it actually will encourage the dog on its own to start self selecting those behaviors in those moments.
No, that's really interesting. I guess it would be versus having a owner who deals with the opposite. So basically, they punish the dog or they discipline the dog when they do something wrong,
Right.
so in hopes to correct it. But I'm guessing that approach kind of backfires because it doesn't really get corrected. Am I right?
Yeah. And it also can make the dog nervous, right? Because
Hmm.
um, positive reinforcement, you're building confidence. And think of even as humans, right? When someone tells you you're doing a good job, you're more inclined to do that behavior again. When someone says you're not doing it right, you start pulling yourself back out of fear or concern that you're going to do it wrong. And so that's really the primary difference between a negative reinforcement and a positive reinforcement, is that I'm going to encourage the dog to do the behaviors that we're looking for, versus negative reinforcement, which is, again, more punishment related and can, especially in service work, can create a very nervous or anxious dog.
That you're so right, and I think you're totally correct when it comes to the comparison between the dogs and us humans. We kind of do respond better like that. So, some of us like to get treats like M and M's and stuff like that,
Good.
right?
They're good.
Yeah. So the other question, so doing the relationship between the positive reinforcement and you talking about the handler, so talking about a service dog, so I'm guessing the positive reinforcement reinforces also the connection and the trust between the dog and the owner, the person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that makes total sense. I have a second question.
Yeah.
Many service disabled member needs service dogs. So, what kind of certification is needed for a service dog in order to become a service dog?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked this, Mr. Molina. This is a question I get asked all the time. And I would love to encourage anyone watching this to go to ada.gov, the American with Disabilities Act.gov. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for pulling that up. You can see right here, there is no certification, and any trainer or company that's telling you otherwise is not adhering to the government guidelines. The reason they do this and they don't have a standard certification is because it would be really easy then for people who maybe can't afford a trainer or can't afford a certain breed of dog to suddenly not have this option available to them. And that's not acceptable. This is available to any American citizen who needs a service dog. And you can see here, they'll tell you what services and some examples that dogs can provide for their handlers. It can make a big difference in the life of someone who needs this help.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. That's very important because, so yeah, like you said, some people maybe um, refrain themselves from getting a service dog because they think the service dog has to have some particular type of certification in order for them to have one.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And the second question is when, as I say, I have a disability, and what proof do I need to carry with me that I have this disability in order to show out? Like if I go to a restaurant or I'm traveling at the airport, and people say, "Well, what is disability? What prove it," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what should my answer be on that?
Yeah. So again, referring back to the ADA.gov, establishments, people are not allowed to ask you what your disability is.
Really?
The same reason they can't ask you why you need a wheelchair. What you can
Mm,
say is, and especially I always encourage people, if you do have a service dog, check out places beforehand, because just like you would if you had a wheelchair, you'd want to have that knowledge going into it. You don't want to find out that they don't have, some places might only have accommodations. I'm, again, from Utah. So sometimes accommodations in the wintertime can be a little bit trickier than during the summer when we have open patios and things like that. Because even though they're service animals, they're still not allowed to be around food that's being prepared, right?
right.
There's still that, health and safety guideline that applies to all places. But what establishments, and people and organizations can ask you, they can ask you, what service or task does this dog provide for you? And it's up to you as the handler or owner to say, my dog is trained to do whatever that task is. I have some dogs who are trained to retrieve medicine. I have some dogs who are trained for when they have a panic attack or they have a tinnitus issue. I have one client who has a dog that's trained to heal at her left side because she's losing her vision on her left side. The dogs that do medication and things like that, um, they might not people might not ever see your dog in action. And so you can just tell them what your dog has been trained to do. And that should be the end of the questions.
Okay. Well, that's really important to know.
Very
Had no idea that was actually the way it was supposed to be. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. And I do have one more question for you.
Yes.
So, where can someone go to get a service dog?
Yes. So again, kind of along the same lines as referring back to the ADA.gov, because this is accessible to everyone, um, the dogs should also be accessible to everyone. My recommendation is to look for a dog that's going to suit your needs specifically. I have some clients who need to travel a lot, so they need a smaller dog that can go with them different places and be easy to transport. I have some clients, a client who would have um, epileptic spells and would fall over. So he actually needed a large dog that could catch him in those moments, to keep him from hitting the floor. But what it comes down to is picking a dog who's confident and outgoing and well suited to the task that you have and you specifically need that dog to perform. And you do not need a specific trainer for it. It's great to have someone like myself who has 20 years of experience doing this. It might be easier for me to implement steps. But if it's something you're comfortable with and you've worked with, you absolutely can train your own dog. And you can train that dog from the Humane Society or from a neighbor who doesn't, for some reason, can't keep their dog anymore. It doesn't have to be a specific breed, a specific age. Even it's just whatever is most beneficial for the task that you have that dog, that you need that dog for.
That is really cool because then you can actually have first a dog that you, as an individual, feel connected with, or there's a connection, and then I guess also having to have the skill,
Yeah.
like you're referring like weight situations, or they respond well to understanding the commands, or actually they don't really. Sometimes I've seen dogs they don't really get commands; they just know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
And that's the goal, right? When you train a dog and specifically you're using that positive reinforcement, you're building those neuron connections, right? It's
Hmm.
into something that dog does instantly because it's triggered by something. And the goal being that you're not giving that dog, in the long run, you're not giving that dog command. So, for example, my client whose dog heels on her left, she doesn't ask her dog to do that anymore. He does it instantly because that's what he's been trained to do. And that's the goal. And like I said, you don't need someone special to help you with that unless that's something you want, because this, again, is a program for everyone. And it's huge. It's a huge help, especially for veterans coming home. Just they're, and every task can be different. I know of a client whose dog actually needs to be off leash, and she goes into the building before the veteran goes in to do a sweep and come back out and get the human, right? um,
Hmm.
because of that PTSD that he.
Right. No, and that's kind of what those kind of questions, those kind of I guess questions is what trigger our research and trying to find out how to help veterans in those specific moments. Because like when there's PTSD involved, is really outside of our logical understanding and control. So if someone has dealt with PTSD, they know that it's not a, oh, just do it. It doesn't happen that way. It's like it's hormonal, whatever it is that is in there in the brains that has triggered those things. Um, the having the dog train on those aspects of it helps tremendously relax, for the veteran to relax and be able to function on a day-to-day basis. And again, we do this for veterans, but this applies to everyone who has a disability of any kind, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
This is across the board. And that's again why I keep, going back to the ada.gov, because it's so pivotal, and there's just so much misinformation when it comes to certification and what your dog needs to wear. And you kind of touched on that. I always recommend having a vest or something that identifies your dog as being a service animal, only so that way you don't have people coming up and trying to pet, particularly kids and things like that. Everyone knows that if they've got the working vest on, you try to give that animal some space. But there isn't actually any card that you need or anything else. Because again, it's available to everyone, and some people can't afford a vest for their dog, and that's
Right.
okay. But the goal being that you can, asked by anyone, say specifically what task that dog performs.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much. We are basically out of time, but we really appreciate you taking the time for this and be able to meet us halfway in the middle of Utah to do this segment with us and for our veterans, veteran community. Really appreciate it, Heather. And if someone wants to connect with you, is there someone somewhere that they can go to?
Yes, absolutely. So, anyone who has any additional questions or anything that they want to ask or they're curious about, they can feel free to check out my website, parkcitydogcenter.com or parkcitydogtraining.com. Both of those have contact information as well as additional information that might be helpful.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And this is the end of our show. And we probably should plan to do this as a follow up segment. There's so much information that can be shared, but time goes really fast. So thank you very much. And we look forward to our next session.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you much. And with this, we end our segment of dog service, or I'm sorry, service dogs, and focusing primarily on veterans who are suffering, going through PTSD, and also anyone who has triggers, really, of any type, whether it's veterans or non-veterans. And what Heather was telling us today is extremely important, because then we have the guidelines on what to do and what not to do, especially if you're a business owner. What can you ask when someone comes into your establishment, or should you ask? What can you ask, or what they should have? All those requirements or regulations that are on the ADA website would be helpful. If you have any questions, please contact us. But for now, we thank you very much for participating in our show, and we thank Heather for uh, taking the time to share with us her knowledge, her wealth of knowledge with the audience. And thank you. And this will be our segment for November. And we look forward to our follow up with Heather on other questions in regards to service dogs for veterans and other people with disabilities. Thank you and have a great day.